evening. How luxurious. They have cool air. We can take it for granted, or we can really appreciate the luxury that we all live with. I always have this light right in my eyes. I'm just going to move this forward here. I think I. Okay. Thanks. So we just finished a retreat with Jogan Salzberg on the book by Hongzhi, the teachings, Cultivating the Empty Field. And he gave a very detailed explication of the teaching of emptiness. And I thought, well, one of the things that we discovered was the first night, the talk was so long that it was hard to hear the whole thing. So we decided, okay, give 3 talks a day, each short. And what a wonderful discovery that was, because we could really appreciate how listening, especially to anything, but especially the Dharma, less is more. Being able to zero in on just a little bit is sufficient. And it's a good thing, because tonight I'm going to give a very short talk. I wanted to share what kind of a simplification that happened in my own understanding through the course of this 7-day retreat. We chant in our chant book, sometimes we chant the guidepost for silent illumination, which begins with the words, silent and serene, forgetting words, bright clarity appears before you, which is really what this empty field is all about, this bright clarity that appears when we really have settled the mind enough, the mind that maintains the whole narrative of the self. When that has quieted into a natural state where nothing is going on there, bright clarity appears. And it's really, this whole text is about the importance of experiencing samadhi. So the first point I wanted to make is to emphasize that although Zen arises through the culture and the teachings of Buddhism, Zen is not Buddhism. And we miss the significance of Zen awakening if we confuse it with Buddhist teachings. So the empty field teaching is really about the Zen awakening, which is awakening to the source of mind, the source of self, the source of everything in the universe. This is source that is not occupied by form, out of which any and all form arises and disperses back into, I don't know. So in Buddhism, we talk about, and we are recipients of this incredible treasure, because we receive both. We receive this very, very full teaching. We receive the teachings of the Four Noble Truths, So first we get to really appreciate that it's difficult to be a conscious being alive in a body that is temporary and conditioned, and that is affected by everything in our environment. It's affected by our own thoughts and other people's thoughts, our own words and other people's words, and actions also. And difficulties are inevitable no matter what your station in life or how awake you are. We've received the Noble Eightfold Path, which is all of the different ways we can cultivate, we can train, we can remember to choose how we practice in this life, how we approach the art with which we approach being a human being, the artistry, the grace, the sensitivity, the appropriateness, the effectiveness, the creativity of it. And it's all built into the Eightfold Path. And we receive the precepts, sure guides to the behavior of our thought, how our thoughts behave, how we use our speech, and how it behaves and misbehaves, and how we use our bodies. So that's all Buddhist practice and teachings, and very important to receive, and very they help us work the life, the ordinary life. It's always relevant. Everything that we do has consequences, so cause and effect holds for every aspect of our human life. And we want to be awake to it. We want to be alert and aware, so that we really have a sense of what we can choose in our response, how to respond. And then there are things we can't choose. And so we look into all of that in our practice. And that's all, in this culture, psychological wisdom. Getting to know who we are as a separate individual identity in a social setting that has rules and kind of conventions of how to think, how to speak, how to behave, how to work, how to love. It's all rule-bound. And that opens up, in a practice. We attend to all of that. And it opens up very gradually, but reliably, if we adopt a life of practice in the Buddhist tradition, in the Buddhist ways, the ways that it's outlined for us. We can study it. We can take this on as practice. And it brings us to a wider perspective and an appreciation for how the mind really, really frames a world. One of the surprising things that Jogan said, but it really hit the nail on the head. He said, none of us are looking at None of us are hearing the same words. None of us are looking at the same people. We all have our own world. And there's no way that I can know yours or you can know mine, except through language and behavior. And we all know how challenging understanding what somebody means when they say something can be. The references that, words are symbols, and the references that they have are defined and derived through our experience with what those words meant coming up and coming along. And they don't mean the same thing in all of the subcultures and the places that we grew up in, the communities that we grew up in. And so that is all what we become so much more attuned to in our Buddhist practice. We look into what is a loving heart, what is compassion. These qualities, these heart qualities, are another thing attended to in Buddhist teachings that help us frame our intention and our aspiration, and can be very, very comforting and relaxing. Because one of the things that we can be pretty sure we get to sooner or later in a regular practice is we get to really relax. We work through all of the ways that we tense into a life, and the tension that comes with claiming territory and protecting it, the territory of the self, the territory of my opinion, or my beliefs about things. All of that really gets to a sense of the condition that our hearts are in. Discovering the deepest truth, the widest, broadest, unconditioned situation, which is that we all have a place, and we all have gifts and ways of offering the energy of our life. And when we finally get to that, it can be through long practice and kind of a prayerful life. We do chanting, and it's our form of prayer. Over and over we repeat these words, and they go into us, and we learn about it, and we get it in our bodies, and it's our form of prayer. And then we vow, and that's really making a commitment that holds through time, through all of time, beyond the span of a life. And we say that our vow, we inherit a vow. We may make our own immediate vows, but basically we all have the vow to awaken, to be of service. Most of us kind of came into life with that. And then either always have done it in one way or another, or remembered it at a certain point, which might bring us to practice. And then, the first book that a lot of people used to read, I don't know about now, was Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And in that, Suzuki Roshi says, practice is not some kind of excitement. Practice is constancy. Constancy. Steadiness. Dogen Zenji says, we practice enlightenment. The only way that the word or the concept of enlightenment applies to anything in our life is it's continual. And sometimes we have enlightenment beyond enlightenment, and sometimes we have delusion beyond enlightenment. The mind is subject to influences, to varying influences all the time. And so this practice of constancy is a wonderful prompt, because it also applies to this silent illumination teaching, the teaching of awakening to the emptiness, the empty field, awakening to the source, awakening in the source. We don't awaken to something separate. It is the source is continual and has no beginning and no end. And in that way, in the Heart Sutra, it talks about without beginning, without end, no eyes, no ears, no nose. That is referring to the realization that takes the foreground in realized meditation, when all the forms in the mind, in the thinking mind, including the sense experiences, fade back, and what is forward is pure source, which has no quality. And it is something that, if you've done a retreat, it can take a number of days to settle down enough to remember, oh yeah. And that's what's referred to as vast spaciousness. It has no beginning, it has never not been. It's not dependent on anything. And we're not in this state of realizing this aspect. It is not human. It doesn't have to do with human particularly. So there's a new camera that's going into space, the Roma, what am I trying to say? What's that word? Travels far into the vast, distant space. Huh?
Deep field.
Interstellar?
Yeah, way beyond. So the Roman, the one called Roma, is going to go 362 million light years away and film as it goes. So it just sent back its first film. I don't know if you noticed, if you saw it, but the space is just filled with galaxies, filled with galaxies. That's also, part of the source. And it's mysterious because we are left with that, well, where does this come from? I mean, we have words that give supposedly a description of a Big Bang, which is quite an idea. But I don't know it intuitively, and I don't know it experientially. Probably. Maybe someday. Doesn't matter. But that's what this teaching is about. The ground that sages cannot transmit. That's one of the chapters in this Cultivating the Empty Field. The ground that sages cannot transmit. There is much that sages can transmit in Buddhist teachings, but we finally get to the source teachings, and that cannot be transmitted. But we know when we're in the presence of them. And to me, it also identified, reading this text, which I read continually, it's really worth getting, the Cultivating the Empty Field by Hongzhi. It's in short passages. You read one at a time and contemplate it. But it reminds me of this, the ground that sages cannot transmit, the experience of being in the presence of great art, whether it's music, or literature, or poetry, or painting, or great acting. There is such a clarity of recognition in the true moment, where everything that is hindered is revealed so truthfully. So that's what we were looking into at Sesshin. One of the phrases in this chapter on the ground that sages can transmit says, empty and desireless, cold and thin, simple and genuine. This is how to go beyond the dusts of habit. Empty and desireless. If you take the mind of emotion, if the mind of emotion hears those words, you might think, well, I don't actually really want to experience that. Empty and desireless. Cold and thin, I don't think so. Simple and genuine, And this is how to go beyond the dusts of habit. So that's the other thing, is that Buddhist teachings really are advanced teaching on habit, human habit and habit mind. And the emptiness teachings are where we get into the timeless, that which lies outside of time. And you know when you have an experience of the timeless. That's another thing that this refers to. What is timeless? What is out beside the dusts of habit? So I just wanted to give this kind of a little orientation, because for the longest time I wasn't sure how to look at where the emptiness teachings fit with Buddhist practice. And I see that, Buddhist practice, that's a religion in a lot of ways. It's a faith mind. It's the ground in which we can really discover a trust in the process of life that we may not have had nurtured in us. And that's religion. That's a spiritual path. But Zen is not a religion. It has nothing to do with what we believe. It's outside of that frame. And it's what, when we have those moments of being that are shocking, because they're so vivid and they're so like nothing else. I just saw a photo because Shanae had the baby, and Shanae was one of our assistant teachers. She just had a baby a couple of days ago. And there's a picture of Soten holding the baby, and he's outside of time. I mean, the expression is so completely, there's no human thought. He's just witness to this mystery of life. Where did you come from? And the same when we're with someone who dies. Where did you go? And then that's when we are really in the body presence of the absolute. So everything that we include in our practice together here supports our ability to go beyond. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisattva, going beyond, always going beyond, just like the interstellar camera. We're always going beyond the mind of the present moment. And the mind of the present moment is only ever going, and coming forth from the source. And those are just words. So Hogan once said at the end of a Dharma talk, so just wash out your ears and forget everything I said. enjoy your life.